It has been 1 week since SpaceX launched Starship from Boca Chica, Texas for its sixth integrated flight test, and since then there has been nothing but action happening down at Starbase. We've seen work on both Pad A and Pad B. The FAA has become involved in upping the cadence for SpaceX's Starship and Super Heavy program. NASA has joined talks for IFT 7, and vehicles have been born and have died at Starbase since the last flight. My name is John. This is Introverse Uncharted, and we're going to hear about that and so much more on this week's Space Activity Update.
Sequence start. Six, five, four, three, two, one, zero. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Introverse Uncharted, the show that aims to remove the gravity from your world and send you on a journey through the stars. My name is John. Welcome back. It's been about a week since I've done anything right here on the channel, but that's kind of to be expected with life and all that other stuff. I told you guys there wasn't going to be the same thing happening as last time. I was trying to force a lot of that time and trying to force a lot of the sun was coming through there. Trying to force a lot of that time and trying to force out some episodes, but trying to change it up a little bit this time around. That's okay. That's absolutely fine. I'm glad that you're here. It is Tuesday, November 26th, 2024. This is your Uncharted Space Activity Update, and there has been so much going on in the last week. What happened last week? Starship did its sixth integrated flight test from Boca Chica, Texas. On the surface level, it's going to go down as a success. For those of you who watch the live stream or watch my Facebook stream or any of that stuff, or just watched it on NASA Spaceflight, again, if you guys haven't, go check them out. The flight went essentially according to plan. There was some diversion, but we saw Super Heavy and Starship leave the pad and make its trajectory over the Gulf of Mexico, advance through hot staging. Once hot staging occurred, there was an initial call out that the pad, essentially, that the OLM was ready to attempt a catch of Booster 13. About another 30, 45 seconds, something like that in there, into the descent of the booster, the pad decided that it was no longer safe to attempt the catch, and diverted the booster out over the Gulf of Mexico. That is just the contingency plan that takes place in that situation. The booster was obviously designed to come back and be caught by the chopsticks, but the SpaceX announced that they had a communications issue with the booster during its return, so they had to divert away just to preserve the pad to stage 0 is of the utmost importance, especially as the second flight tower and pad is not ready to go. So we saw the descent of Booster 13 down over the Gulf of Mexico. It performed a soft splashdown, essentially mimicking what it would do over the OLM while being caught by the chopsticks. It soft touchdowned on the Gulf of Mexico, tipped over, and the flight termination system activated, and it exploded. That's not to be not expected. If you watched, again, my stream or NSF stream, the call out that was a possibility was definitely there. And if it hadn't exploded, they would have blown it up using a wide variety of plans and contingencies. One of which, obviously, being the flight termination system. But it can be as extreme as flying a fighter jet over it and hitting it with a missile. That is literally in the contingency plan. That's something they have discussed in the past. So that was, RIP Booster 13. That flight was done. Ship continued on. Ship 31, downrange, and they had removed, obviously, a bunch of tiles to try to project what it would look like when they were going to have to use the catch hardware on the ship. The ship then advanced through through its staging downrange, and then they reactivated a Raptor engine. They relit a Raptor engine in space, which is great. It's the first time that they've accomplished that. Um, Post that only lasted a handful of seconds. They began to bring it back in through reentry, where it had to endure heat and plasma all the way through. The vehicle did make it through peak heating, but you could see the wear and tear on the vehicle as it was going through it. Once it advanced through the plasma stage down into our atmosphere, you could see the damage, but then it still went right through its mission objectives and performed its own soft splashdown in the Indian Ocean where it tipped over. It did not explode like the booster, but it did start on fire. I'm sure that they handled that post all of that. But on the surface level, there were a lot of successes. Did they get to catch a booster? No. Not every time is it going to look like it did for Flight 5. Flight 5 was an anomaly for sure, and they had already said that they were a millisecond away from having to divert the booster out for IFT 5. So we got lucky. We got a once in a lifetime on that one. I say once in a lifetime, but it's just because it's so early still in the program. One of the things NSF and SpaceX has said all the way through is to expect these kind of errors to take place where they have to divert out, where they have to expend equipment. That is to be expected in any test program. Now, because I also do this stuff on TikTok, I will say that my very first stitch on TikTok, a stitch if you guys don't watch or don't do TikTok, is where somebody can take a clip of your video and then make a video out of it themselves where they say and do whatever they want to do with it. I obviously was using secondhand imagery, so I used some of NASA Spaceflight's videos. Again, thank you to them. They've always been really cool about me posting that kind of stuff on TikTok. I've never been flagged, any of that kind of stuff, so much appreciated. Just spreading the knowledge of them is probably more important than anything. I posted the video of the booster exploding, and somebody stitched that and said, oh, this is the guy who's about to run the Department of Government Efficiency, but he can't even efficiently build a booster, and he's dumping all these chemicals into the water. Here's the deal. There's a two-sided coin to this. Those elements did absolutely go into the water. Not very much of them, as the booster had gone through its entire lifespan at that point, burning all of that off. But also, it's liquid nitrogen, liquid oxygen. They're all natural environmental elements used to become rocket fuel. But in the moment, they were obviously detonated and exploded, and they had FAA approval to do all of this. So the EPA and all that all know and have to sign off on these projects. So what I'm going to tell you is, while it looks bad probably in the moment, it was all stuff that went literally to the checklist according to plan. And to my knowledge, at this point in time, there has been no mishap investigation by the FAA announced at this point. That's all good news. But now, let's get into this week's stuff that has been going on. Now, we're going to start off with Pad A, the original launch mount for Starship, the one that we saw IFT 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 come off of. The launch mount was absolutely roasted this time around. Not necessarily physically damaged, but definitely cooked by the exhaust coming off of the Super Heavy booster. The chopsticks and the launch mount had their guiding pins reinstalled. This is pretty standard. They get removed about a week prior to launch, and then post the launch, they get reinstalled. And this is kind of a good signifier that they're going to be heading towards probably booster testing for next flight, probably in coming weeks. The main propellant lines were also inspected. They thought there could possibly be some damage there, but also just kind of status quo, right? Whenever you go through a launch and you do the cadence that SpaceX is trying to do, they have to make sure that all of the equipment is still up to standard, and they keep moving along. So they checked the main propellant lines and moved on from that. The ship quick disconnect, the QD arm, was also fairly toasted compared to a lot of normal flights. And not necessarily not expected. Flight 1 definitely had a cooked quick disconnect where they had to borderline replace the whole thing. But they did a lot of work on it. It's been pretty stable since then. But the ship quick disconnect definitely got roasted this time, both for the booster and for the ship. The ship worse so than the booster. You can actually see depending on what image you find, a picture of the face plate that goes right to the ship, pretty roasted. But again, not to be unexpected, and I think that they're obviously going to make some modifications in order to prevent that going forward. Um, One of the things that they thought could have happened as a reason for the abort from the catch sequence was obviously SpaceX made a call about a loss of communication to the vehicle. Um, there's a telecommunications tower at the top of the launch tower. Literally, just I'll put up an image, but it got bent, and there's speculation that that could be what lost the communications to the booster, but that has not been confirmed. And honestly, they have about 9 different ways that they can communicate with the booster during flight. So, I'm obviously not going to say that that is what it is, but it could be. It could be what it is. The telecommunications tower was bent. Excuse me. And they went up and since have fixed it, straightened it back out, and hopefully they find a way to not have this be an issue in the future. Also, since then, Pad A has seen a ton of tanker trucks come back in so that they can refuel all the tank farm, get all the propellants back in ahead of what will be ship and booster testing, and then obviously IFT7 in the near future. Now, this is just going to be a really cool piece of information for you guys, but the tank farm replenishment, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of those chemical elements, those liquid cryochemical elements, to do a Starship flight. In a Starship flight, they use about 1,000 metric tons of liquid methane. They use about 3,600 metric tons of liquid oxygen, and the tank farm also uses about 1,000 metric tons of liquid nitrogen, most of which is completely burnt off during the flight. So these tanker trucks have to come back in and refuel all of the tank farm. They've obviously talked about creating their own chemical elements down there and having their tank farms actually be things that develop these chemicals. But as of now, it doesn't sound like that's something that they're going to go ahead with, and they're just going to continue to shuttle them in, which, teach their own. Excuse me. If I could just get rid of this pesky cough. Onto Pad B. Prior to flight, Pad B had its gigantic crane disassembled. Since then, they brought in a Liebherr LR 11,000 to be built. This is another absolutely massive crane. This will probably be used to help lift and install the chopsticks and the ship quick disconnect from up high on the tower. So they're back hard at work on trying to get Pad B ready to go. Probably won't be ready to go until about halfway through next year, however. The drawworks for the actuating cables were installed just prior to IFT6, with the cable spools being installed just before IFT6 as well. The OLM for Pad B is still being assembled at the SpaceX Sanchez lot. So they're definitely making progress on that pad, but like I said, it's unlikely that that pad is ready to go until probably Q2, Q3 of next year. All right. Whew. Kind of blew through that. That was fast and furious. Let's talk about let's see, what is next on my list? Let's talk about some other vehicles that they have going on down at Starbase right now before we get into the hardware that we really, really, really want to know about. Booster 15 is in the Mega Bay. Possibly, it's possible that it's moved to Massey's for cryo in the next couple weeks, and then it will be followed by being moved back to the Mega Bay for engine installation. Booster 16 had its liquid oxygen tank completed, and now its aft section is being rolled into the Mega Bay. They'll start to stack those sections, and we'll see the birth of a new booster here soon. I've talked about this on this channel as well before, but Ship 26. Ship 26 was a very odd ship. After its development, they removed the heat tiles from it, kind of signaling that it probably wasn't going to be a flight vehicle. They also never installed a Pez dispenser or its payload bay door. So the vehicle just was a giant stainless steel vehicle. Um, it then went through cryo and passed its cryo testing. They installed engines and they tested the engines once at Starbase and then once at the Massey's outpost. Um, then it was moved back and moved into the rocket garden, and it has just kind of sat there ever since. NASA Spaceflight has a running joke about Ship 26 that has a massive fan club, but it's just a defunct ship and it should probably be destroyed. And that is exactly what happened. They have scrapped Ship 26 as of just after IFT-6. It was rolled into the Mega Bay literally hours after the flight. So Ship 26 no more. Let's have a moment of silence for Ship 26. Oh, that's enough of that. I don't know if you heard that. That sounded like my kid was coming through the wall. Insanity. Okay. The FAA. Let's talk about the FAA. Especially with the presidential election and all that. There's no telling what these government agencies are going to do and accomplish in coming years, coming months, coming weeks, all that kind of stuff. The FAA released a updated, revised draft of the tiered environmental assessment of SpaceX and the Starship Super Heavy program, essentially claiming that they are going to be allowed to up the cadence following a mandatory public hearing where the public gets to voice their opinions of SpaceX and the operations in that area. But the environmental, let me give you some of the updates for the environmental assessment. The environmental assessment would include up to 3 night launches. A night launch would be considered to be 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. During those night launches, there would be no catches attempted. That would mean that all of those vehicles would be expended. Essentially, they would soft water land just like we saw. They also posted that there was no significant environmental changes since the previous assessment, which was in 2022. So that's all good news. This also ups the ability for SpaceX to launch these vehicles from 4 times a year to 25 times a year. Do I think they hit that cadence next year? No, absolutely not. They will not do that. But it gives them the ability to give it a shot. Now, we just have to wait for what NSF refers to as a FONSI. And FONSI stands for a finding of no significant impact, which will finalize that launch cadence and that updated draft into being a finalized document. And then all of that is possible and can go through. Again, it has to follow a mandatory public hearing, so we're probably a couple months away from actually hearing the results of all that. Now, let's get into the things that we know we really, really want to talk about, and that is IFT-7, the next flight test. Those flight vehicles have been selected as Booster 14, which is still, one of their V1 boosters, V2 boosters, whatever it is. I think it's V2 technically. It might be V1. And then Ship 33, which is the first second block vehicle that we will see for the ship program. Booster 14 has completed its cryo testing about a month ago, and then it was moved back to the Mega Bay for engine and grid fin installation. Now it will await being moved back to the launch complex for its engine testing. Again, Ship 33 will be the first V2 Starship to fly. There are tons and tons of physical changes. I don't have an entire list of them, but I will have to make a video of that list as we start to find out what they are. But SpaceX has essentially said that every time they've flown, anything that they've learned is now being updated and put into the V2 block of Starships. Cryo testing was done last month, just prior to the IFT-6 program. Engines were installed just before IFT-6. They're still the Raptor 2s. There was speculation they could move to Raptor 3s, but they're still on Raptor 2s. The ship could be rolled to the Massey's outpost literally at any time to do engine testing. The next flight will have a soft water landing for the ship again, as they will not attempt to catch a ship this time around. The booster, always on the table for a possible catch, but If the soft water landing is successful for Ship 33, then on the following flight, they will attempt a catch of the ship as well. So that'll be ship probably 34 for IFT 8. Otherwise, the flight profile is fairly similar. They're going to go to the Indian Ocean and do a soft splashdown, just like we saw this time around. It is highly likely that both of these vehicles will be tested at Starbase before the end of 2024, probably in coming weeks as Starbase is wrapping up all of its maintenance following the flight. NASA also kind of threw their name in the hat with a publication they released just prior to IFT 6, which essentially stated that NASA would be looking to take images using some of their flight planes to see the re-entry and landings of both ship and booster so they could get a better understanding ahead of Artemis. NASA also said that the launch of the next Starship for IFT 7 would happen no earlier than January 11th of 2025. So NASA calling their shot, trying to up the cadence because Artemis is knocking on the door. They want to get back to the moon, and they need SpaceX to be ready to go in order to do that. So they're going to up the cadence. They're going to put some pressure onto SpaceX in order to achieve that upped flight cadence. And that brings to end this very long list of notes at which I took ahead of this episode. It's always a busy time at Starbase. Like Starbase, ever since I started watching just before IFT 1, has been a hectic place where there's always a billion things going on between building new buildings and getting flight hardware ready and all that kind of stuff. I don't see that slowing down in coming days, weeks, months, years. The program is advancing, and that's a positive thing to see, especially ahead of the Artemis program. No matter what your opinion of SLS is, the Artemis program is the next big milestone for space activity in this country by leaps and bounds. And it'll be very intriguing to see what the tempo looks like now with the upped flight cadence from the FAA being allowed possibly in the next couple of months, and with the pressure being put on by NASA for them to get these vehicles flight ready and land ready so that they can get the human landing systems all installed and we can get people back to the surface of the moon. And then obviously Elon's goal is to go to Mars. So we'll see how that looks over the next handful of months. Whew. All right. Sorry, guys. For some reason, the cough is just absolutely killing me today, so you can probably hear my voice kind of in and out on that. I apologize. Trying to just get past it, but it's kicking my butt. As always, follow us on all of the socials, on Facebook, on TikTok, on Twitter, X, whatever, on Instagram, Threads. I'm on all those where I post updates about when episodes are going to come out or when episodes are out, stuff like that. So go ahead and go like, follow, share, and subscribe to all of those. Thank you guys so very much for all that you guys have done interacting with my channel. Definitely up in subscribers since the last couple of videos, which is awesome. Over 100 views on the 130-ish on the Mike Tyson Logan Paul fight video. Had a decent amount of views for the live stream here on YouTube, and then well over 100 on Facebook. So seriously, thank you guys so very much for tuning in, for dropping likes and comments, and for interacting with the page. It means the world. And if you guys haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. There will be more awesome content coming out in the near future. Thank you so very much for tuning in, and remember to do more than simply exist, and come with me to IFT 7 in 2025. We'll see you soon.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.